A viewer writes, "The light bulbs in my dining room chandelier seem to sing. Is my house haunted? Nervous. Fenland Falls, Ontario." Well, Nervous, calm down a bit. I think rather than a ghost, what you have in your dining room is probably a dimmer. Before the invention of the triac dimmer, there was only one way to dim a light bulb. That was to insert a resistance in series with it. This way, any power that doesn't make it to the light bulb gets dissipated as heat in the resistor, and varying that resistance varies the brightness of the bulb. This method is wasteful of power because of the heat, and it's not too suitable for wall box mounting either, also because of the heat. Another kind of a dimmer called an auto transformer gets around that heat problem, but it's very expensive. Which brings me to your ghost. The dimmer that you have makes use of the fact that house current alternates 60 times a second. A triac is a solid-state device that can be made to conduct or not conduct electricity in either direction. It switches off or on. Now, so far that sounds more like a switch than a dimmer, but the triac's quicker than the eye. This is what the power looks like in your house, when you see it on an oscilloscope anyway. It's a 60-cycle sine wave. The sine wave shape, sinusoidal if you want to talk posh, comes from the rotations of the power company's generators and all that trigonometry stuff you didn't pay any attention to in school. Now, light bulbs don't actually give a darn about which way the current flows through them. So what they see is a current that goes on and off 120 times each second. The sine wave, you see, it passes through 0 volts twice in each of the 60 sine wave cycles a second. So how come the light bulbs don't flicker with all this fluctuating power? Well, it's too fast. The filament just can't cool off in the space between those half cycles. Which brings us to the singing light bulbs. Now, at first glance, the triac seems like a stupid component. You hook it up as a switch and it doesn't conduct any current. Tickle its little gate electrode with a small current and it does conduct completely and in either polarity. And here's a quirk. Once the triac's conducting, it stays turned on forever. Well, forever until you remove its power. Making this totally on or off component into a dimmer involves some tricks, but it has some rewards. First of all, turning it off on alternating currents, no problem. Remember, that power line goes through 0 volts 120 times each second. Here's how it gets to be a dimmer. If the gate is triggered at the beginning of each power line half cycle, the triac conducts again until that half cycle crosses 0 again. That results in a bright bulb. To dim the lamp, the dimmer circuitry waits a little while after the cycle starts before triggering. As the circuit waits longer and longer, the bulb gets dimmer and dimmer. At all times, the triac is totally on or off. There's no resistance, so it doesn't have to dissipate much heat. So, why do the light bulbs sing? Is it because they're so happy with this dimmer? Fed from full sine wave power, that filament is being smoothly led from 0 to peak voltage, then back down to 0 again. On the dimmer, the filament gets a longer chance to cool, and then it's presented with a sudden connection to full voltage. You'd sing too. If the singing annoys you, you don't have many options, but you should try different bulbs. Some filament structures are quieter than others. And now we get to the wouldn't you know it department. I was about to demonstrate a singing light bulb, and I picked one with the longest filament I could find, because I always thought the longer filaments sang better. This carbon filament light bulb with a completely 6-inch filament won't sing at all. So, this little normal 40-watt bulb does sing. There's probably room in the world for an invention of somebody who invents a light bulb guaranteed not to sing in a dining room chandelier. And using lower wattage bulbs will allow you to dial a more complete power cycle setting for the same amount of light. If none of this helps, I think your house is haunted. Move away.